Welcome back, everybody, to Thanks for Your Concern. You're here with Berenice.
And I'm Ella. Welcome back. We're happy to have you. Berenice, nice to see you. How was your weekend? How's everything doing?
It's been good. There's been a lot of self-discovery this month. Has it been good? Has it been bad? I think it's been a little bit of both. It's been really emotionally dramatic, but I'm coming out on the other side, honestly. I don't know, New York summer is coming, city girling, things are looking up. I am excited to just get the ball rolling on that outdoor activities in general. I seem to be meeting a lot of new people with good vibes. So I'm just gonna follow the vibe and see where that takes me. Yeah. What about you? How you been?
I'm doing awesome, fabulous. I'm drained by life though, okay? But it's just adult things. I don't know. It's just a slog. Sometimes I feel like time's going by really quickly in a way that it hasn't in the past. And the upside of that is that oh, it's the weekend again. But then the downside of that is holy shit, the weekend's gone. I feel like it's just snapping through. But something I was thinking about is so Sprinkle Sprinkle.
Yeah.
I think we don't love all of her advice. But
she's kind of toxic, but she knows what's up, okay?
She was saying to an extent, she was saying the best way to manifest is to thank the universe for the things that you want, being thank you for this, and being specific and saying thank you and thanking the universe for things, because then the universe has to catch up with your gratitude. And I was like, oh, whoa, that's something different. And so I've been doing that, where I'm thanking the universe in my notebook every day as a new manifestation tool. And I was like, you know what? A broken clock is right 2 times a day. I love this.
That makes sense. Because it's a lot of manifesting is believing you already have it. So I like that. I'm going to try that. Okay, cool.
So that's my hot new tip. But I'm so excited for this week's episode.
Yes.
We're talking about...
Is it that deep?
Is it that deep?
Deep?
It is. It is that deep.
Yeah, it is.
Are you ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Thanks for your concern. Okay, so this episode, is it that deep? It's kind of spawned because I've been told this, oh, it's not that deep. And it is triggering to me. And so I just wanted to talk about it in all different types of capacities.
Yeah, I'm a sensitive girl. I know this about myself. That's why I hate when people are trying to fuck with me. And I'm like, listen, I just want to preface by I'm really sensitive. I take everything way too personal. Everything is so deep for me. So maybe I'm not your girl. You know what I mean? If you are not ready for something that's going to be deep, then leave me alone, because you're going to have to dig deep with some of my shit. Okay. I like connection. I am a deep human being. And if you just are not emotionally competent enough for that, I'm not your girl. I'm not your girl.
Honestly, I wish I could have that honest of a conversation with people, because I feel whenever someone says it's not that deep, it sends me into a rage. Yeah. So
yeah,
I remember this instance that this didn't happen to me, but it happened to one of my friends, and it pissed me off. But it's don't let someone stunt your intelligence. I feel just because someone can't see it that it's that deep doesn't mean that it isn't.
Yeah.
I had a friend tell me that she was dating this dude, and she made a comment. She was like, oh, it's really interesting to see the different flora and fauna that are this part of the country. I'm not used to it. And there's lots of different animals. And the guy's response was you're hella different. You're hella weird. That's a weird thing to notice. And I told her, I was like, that's not a weird thing to notice. Drop him. What?
What I will say this is that I've learned sometimes about men is that they're goofy, bro. Like sometimes when they mean weird is because they just don't understand it. Like they haven't encountered it. So sometimes you gotta be like a gentle parent. Like, oh no, it's not weird. But yeah, it's new. You know? Yeah, it is different. I learned about this like in therapy because when I first started getting anxiety attacks, obviously like one of my biggest, I guess, like fears was like people would think I'm like crazy because I thought I was like going crazy. And then I dated somebody and I was telling them about my anxiety issues. And they were like, oh, that's so weird. And I'm like, no, it's not really weird. Like, I mean, like mental health condition that actually a lot of people have. So it's not that crazy. You just don't have it. But you got your own shit. So I don't worry. We don't have to get started.
I love that you have that patience. I don't. I mean, I get it. I understand though when people say like, "Oh, that's weird." It's just they haven't really thought about it. But it's like, don't make that make you uncomfortable or
Oh yeah.
insecure about your
Yeah,
own
no.
thoughts because someone doesn't get it.
100%. I think with the whole thing that it's not that deep, it's like just really invalidating. It's an invalidating
Mhm.
experience when somebody just is not trying. And sometimes it's an excuse, right? Like some people will say that because they're trying to like avoid conflict, and some people just like really don't think it's that deep, but that's just because it's not that deep to them. In the trying to avoid conflict, I get this one a lot with gaslighting. It's not that deep. I've had instances where like someone is clearly gaslighting somebody and then they go with like, oh, like it's not that serious, like it's not that deep. I'm just like have other things going on, when this person doesn't want to see the other person, doesn't want to be around the other person, right? So it's like instead of making them feel crazy that there's an issue that's going on in their head, why don't you just let them know where your head's at, so then they know not to reach out to you? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
No, the gaslighting, and honestly, here's the thing is that like not all like gaslighting and manipulating is not intentional, so like it might be harder to catch. But I was watching an episode of Sex and the City where like Carrie basically says to like Big like, "Oh, like I think you're hiding me." And he's like, "Oh, it's not that deep." And I was like, "Hmm.
hmm.
Is it not?" Because kind of like what you were saying, where it's like, you've had like, I've had a situation where it's like, oh, hey, like, I think it's kind of weird that you didn't invite me to this party. And then being like, oh, it's not that deep. I just didn't really think about it. It's like, really? It's not. And then you find out their ex was there, and I was like, is it really not that deep? Or you're not trying to get me in the same room as your ex?
People are liars, and this is the way they avoid accountability, okay? People like to lie to themselves about the type of person that they are. It just is. When you like, bro, if you're a little shitty, like own it, you know? Like if you're a little shitty and you're afraid to hurt people's feelings, you're such a wimp. Like pussy up. You know what I mean? Like if you're shitty, say that shit with your chest.
Okay, so there's actually like this whole situation that I laugh about 4 times, and it was just when this guy was so upfront about being shitty, and I kind of circle back to it because it was so funny. Like obviously he was just being such a shithead, but to this day I feel like the fact that he was upfront about it made me respect him a little bit more, because it's like, well, at least you're fucking being real about it. Like, at least you're being real about being a shithead instead of pretending. Because I know a lot of people in that situation would just pretend not to be a fucking asshole. And so I laugh about it four
Yeah.
times a year because it was such an out of pocket comment. But then again, you're like, at least you're being real about it.
Yeah, honestly. And I think this comes, there's like a TikToker that was posting her experience about dating like a nice guy. And because he thought he was a nice guy, he was lying to her the entire time to keep up with the facade that he was like a nice guy, instead of like being real and telling it how it is and coming up like maybe as an asshole. So in my experience, I think like sometimes I'm really drawn to people that are more like in the asshole, because they're just so upfront with the things that they're interested about and that they're not, right? They're gonna tell it how it is. And something about that is like really refreshing to me, because I don't have to like guess your intention or assume anything. I just know that you're kind of shitty, but then I also know that like when you're genuinely interested in something, like That's it.
Yeah.
It is straightforward. It's not that deep. I think that something can only be as can be not deep for somebody else, but it can be very deep for you. And with the gaslighting, if it is deep for you and you're like trying to hold on to the idea of like it's not that deep, like it really is not that deep. Like this is like trying to be the chill girl, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
you need to cut that out because it's deep for you and then you cried 5 days about it and you went on a bender and you spiraled. I think it's worth it to explore why that theme was deep for you because someone probably just triggered you, right? And if anything, sometimes it's worth the self exploration. If you're going to get nothing out of the situation other than being treated like shit by another human being, this happens a lot, like in situationships. For me, at least it did in the past. I'm like, what is this deep for me? If these like interactions with this person were so like invalidating to my feelings, or it was deep because this was a reflection of a pattern that I have like with myself and partners. You know what I mean? So that's why it was deep for me. And sometimes maybe that's the lesson. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's actually a little bit of self-reflection, but honestly, it's like if someone is trying to downplay why it's deep, this is why like being able to communicate your feelings it becomes like a real tool because I'm just thinking about this like have you seen like those TikToks of like, homeboy like a situationship ruins a birthday
Yeah.
and then they like go back and are talking to them again. I had like a similar situation where it's like, I really shouldn't let this ruin my day, but it was just fucking sent me on a spiral. And I was able to like communicate that in a way where it's like, hey, so this might not like feel that deep to you, but you just kind of blew up my birthday, like for reals. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just set off an atomic bomb on my fucking birthday. Like, you should have kept fucking quiet. Like, stay the fuck out of my life, you know? And they were actually able to be like, whoa, my bad. I didn't mean to do that. And then they disappeared forever. Was that the desired outcome? No, but like because I was able to communicate, like this really hurt me. And it is that deep sometimes.
Yeah, that is very true. And with a lot of people where it's not that deep, they're just not ready to take on anybody else's feelings for the most part. I think like unfortunately we live in a society that's very like emotionally stunted. So if somebody like gets defensive or ghosts you when you bring something up, I know in my opinion, if it is that deep for me and you try to say no, you're getting like a 5 paragraph essay about why I think it is that deep. And that just works for me, okay? But yeah, if they invalidate you, they ghost you, they get defensive, they try to put the blame on you, crazy delusional. These people do not have space for your feelings. I'm sorry, and their response should be a clear indication of why you shouldn't take it personally. Okay, it's nothing that probably you did. I mean, everybody has like a part in their own hurt, but if you're able to kind of take their lack of being able to like sit with your feelings because that's just where they're in life, it does help you kind of like move on from this isness because it's not something they're trying to do to you. It's just something they're like not capable of doing based on who they are. And then you can make a decision whether you want to have this person in your life, right? Like proceed with caution at this point because you know this person is never going to make space. Well, not never, but at least right now they're not in the place where they can make space for your feelings. So this is probably not a good person to have as like a friend or like a significant other if they're not going to make space for your feelings, if they're going to be constantly triggering you and it's like you're talking to a wall, you know?
Yeah. Because on the flip side, when you do have someone that's like willing to work with you, and if they say like, "Oh, it's not that serious, it's not that deep," and then you're like, "Actually, this is how this made me feel," and then they don't invalidate your feelings, and they're like, "Oh, wow, I apologize, I didn't. Those were not my intentions. I'll think about that going forward." Like, I feel like someone with like anxious attachment like me, like there's been a lot of healing that like I've needed to do around that, but there's also like on some level, once someone gets to know you, they can get to know your preferences and what can help you feel like safe and secure. So it's like kind of on the other side of the coin that not everyone is going to be against going deep with you. You just have to like find the right person.
Some people are just not in their moment. Some people have things going on in their lives that doesn't let them be there. Doesn't mean that they're never gonna get there, but it does mean that maybe you should just pull back a little bit, put your energy to yourself. That is always good. Just get hotter. Honestly, every time somebody hurts my feelings, I think I do get hotter. And I think it's just because, like, thank you for redirecting my energy straight back to myself, you know? And when you
Yes.
have more time and energy to yourself, you can get into skincare, you can get into, a new hobby, anything you want, really. Yeah. Other than people, there, other than interpersonal relationships, there are other things that I think are that deep that people like to brush off.
I see it on. Have you seen it like on reality TV? But like, it's just like things that also play out in real life. Like, there was like a microaggression. Actually, I would say it was like an aggressive comment that was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And it's like, it's like, oh, it wasn't that serious. It's like, bro, you just like brought up a racial stereotype against me like 3 times this season. It kind of is that deep. And I sometimes see that playing out like microaggressive comments, and you're like, no, it is that deep. Like, let me give you a little bit of context. But that was a fucked up comment.
Yeah. Especially when somebody from a marginalized group is calling you out and you say it's not that deep when you're in a position of privilege. Now that's your choice of how you want to react. But personally, in the times that we live today, I would probably just sit with that before responding and think, is it that deep? Could I have taken play in any of these dynamics maybe a little different? You know? Do some research before you respond, because that people are looking real silly when they don't have enough background knowledge to know that their comment was either ignorant or stupid, and that it does impact a large group of people maybe more than they thought they would because they've never had to think about that before.
And honestly, I think that people are willing to give people grace if they're willing to kind of like sit with accountability. Because let me just say this, because we live in a racist society, there's a lot of things that are inherently racist that you might not know. And like, I know in my lifetime, I think there's been words that I might have said like when I was 12 that I don't say anymore because I gained education. But if you sit there and be like, no, it's not that deep, and completely invalidate somebody's feelings without even educating yourself, like that's gonna piss people off. Rightfully so.
Experience, yeah, their experiences or their existence, like people who don't see certain, like, oh my god, I just know people that say some comments about, specifically the ones that like set me off, are sure, like surrounding like trans people, where they're just like invalidating like somebody's like whole existence, and I'm just, sends me into a spiral into the abyss, because I just don't get how people can be that, their brains can be just so like this. um so
Yeah.
just be careful with your words and how they impact people. I think when it comes to this, it comes to accountability, and one thing is like apologizing and being okay with being wrong. I think we're human beings. I don't know why people are like so afraid to be wrong, or so stuck on being right. Right? Like two things can be true at once for different people and shit like that. People, you can have good intentions and your impact can be horrible. You're right. So kind of analyzing the impact rather than focusing on your intention, especially like when you're approaching a situation where you might have to apologize to somebody. I think that's really important. Okay. You may have the best intention going into something and just absolutely wreck somebody with what you said. We are like, treat people gently, obviously, but like that does happen. And I just think like people learning to apologize and say, like, hey, I know that wasn't my intention, but I am really sorry about how my actions made you feel, how my actions impacted you, right? Because that still takes accountability. That it was your action that did that. The I'm sorry you feel that way. Don't do that. Don't do that.
We're all human and everyone deserves like grace, but the first part of that is taking accountability. And when you say like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way, it's like you're immediately putting it on the other person instead of looking at like what you did that impacted somebody else.
Period. Other things that I think are that deep, though, people just like, whoop, forgot to think about that. It is Earth Day today. We're recording on Earth Day, And I think it's time to remind some people that the shit that you wear and the things that you do daily, it's part of a bigger system, right? Especially with fashion. I have a lot of trendy friends. I love you all. You're all beautiful, amazing. We all need to do better, especially when it comes to our consumption of clothing. It's great to have the newest styles and all that. And I know that this comes with a bigger, honestly, just like issue where it comes sometimes between sizes. There's not a lot of sizes out there, limited clothing, different price points. So there's different layers to this. But fast fashion is killing our environment. It's killing the ecosystem. Okay, it is a matter of, well, there's so much that you can look into. A good documentary that just came out is a Brandy Melville's like documentary on HBO. They talk about fast fashion and its impact within like colonialism. Ghana takes so much of the world's like secondhand clothing, and it is absolutely ruining their ecosystem, like their people, the ocean, the animals. So definitely think about your consumption and like the fast fashion companies, especially Shein and like H&M.
Yes. And I mean, I think sometimes when we say like, I know that it can be like overwhelming because of every single one of our decisions actually does impact the whole entire globe when it's added to the collective. And sometimes it can like cause paralysis because it's like, okay, well, because there's no, um,
You don't see it, right?
what the fuck am I thinking of? There's no conscious consumption. There's no conscious consumption under capitalism. So like
Yeah.
there's an upside and a downside to like every decision. So like we know that we can't make perfect decisions, but that doesn't excuse us from making like the best decisions that we can. And so it's like, of course, I'm in a different financial place now that I am 10 years ago. So I can, make different choices, but still 10 years ago, there's still better choices than others. And then also, you have to like kind of hold accountability because we know on some extreme level that there's people who are consuming fast fashion at a level that they could consciously consume other brands. That's not the same for everyone, but there are those people. And overconsumption is a thing. So it's like reduce, reuse, recycle. And the first R of that is reduce. So like reducing our consumption of everything, making sure that not only with clothes, but like with food and yeah, just make sure we're consuming wisely. And I know that like, I love TikTok, but like one of the things is that like they're making it so easy for us to just like buy things so quickly and consuming all types of goods. And it's really hard to be a human because you're just trying to like get by and like make yourself like a little bit happier every single day. So it is difficult, but doesn't excuse ourselves from thinking about it.
Yes, and if you're a fashion girly, one thing that you can, or a tool you can use to kind of like challenge your spending, you want more money in your pocket anyway, okay? Is the 30 wear rule. And it's basically your commitment to wear whatever article you're buying at least 30 times, which means like if you're buying something for one occasion, can I borrow it from somebody else? You know? Or
I love that.
secondhand, or you're making something out of things that are already in this planet. I love me going through the thrift store and finding some of like unconventional materials. Those have been probably my favorite festival outfits, so you like get creative, challenge yourself. I think we all have the potential to make such cool things if we just like think outside the box a little bit. And everybody has a different social responsibility. It's not like everybody's going to do the same thing like some people choose to be like minimalistic, and that's great. Their social responsibility just looks a little different, but doing something over absolutely nothing is definitely a good place to start.
Preach.
Yeah.
Okay, talking about something over nothing and like me being like it is that deep. We're coming to the part of the year where we're having elections and election things are picking up and like choosing not to vote. I feel like people think it's like, oh, it's not that deep. I'm just not voting. Come on. Let's be so fucking for real. If you're listening to this in America, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're listening to this and you are a US citizen that's allowed to vote, it is a privileged position. anyone that gets a vote in this country, it's a privilege because of how our justice system is set up and other barriers of entry to vote. So it's that. But if you also look like across the globe, democracy is something we have to fight for at this point. One documentary that I would recommend that's on Hulu is The People's President. It kind of talks about politics in Uganda, and like it kind of gives you a perspective on how someone could be democratically elected and then it switches into something else. So yeah, baby, it is that deep. We have to vote.
And
Take it
not
as a
everybody
privilege.
can vote. Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you care about your homies and they're in a position where they can't vote, well then you gotta have their back. So if that's what gets you out there, have your homies back, if anything.
and again, it's kind of like back to the like. There's not. We might feel like there is not like a perfect choice right now, but that doesn't like mean we shouldn't still go out and vote, even if it's on the local election available. And like a lot of people, rights are getting slashed at this country left and right. So if you think maybe your rights aren't gonna came for, they are, bitch. You're just last on the list.
It's not
It'll
your
come
turn
for
yet,
you.
but your
Yeah.
turn is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good way to practice for when it really matters. You could just be already ready. You'd be like, oh, I already did this. I already know what is going on. That's beautiful. Take it as a warm up, as a pregame. Okay?
Yeah.
Some other things I think are that deep. Friends' behaviors. If you see that your friends are struggling, I know it's easy when you are maybe like in an environment where you're out all the time or whatever to think that your friend partaking in certain activities maybe it is not that deep. But sometimes it is that deep, okay? Check in on your homies, because some behavior, when you see your friend be like, okay, yeah, they're a partier too. Oh, they're blacking out and they're not okay and they're crying at the bar, or they're just MIA for days. There's probably something going on,
Family.
Living situations, mental health. I think that we can all check in on our homies a little more. I sometimes get a little too emotionally involved in my friends' lives, which I feel like that's something I've been trying to navigate a little better. However, that has never not been, I don't know, like, I don't want to say rewarding in a way, but like my friends, I think the good friendships that I have is because I was maybe a little too on them about certain things. And then later they were like, oh no, I was actually really struggling. And I'm like really glad you were there, because not a lot of people were. So if you see something, say something, okay? A lot of people are very lonely. A lot of people actually don't have that many support system. It's hard to talk to family members sometimes. It's hard to talk to significant others sometimes. Maybe it's your significant other is the one that's causing it. So, like, talk to your friends, make sure they're okay, and follow up with them. Even if you're busy, it's worth it to set a little reminder just to follow up with how they're doing.
I love that. I feel like that like brings me to like my last one about like it is that deep, is that we are a part of like a collective, and you should abide by the golden rule, which is like treat others in the way that you would like to be treated. And that goes for people within your circle, that just like goes for the broader universe. Like we should all be conducting ourselves in a way that if everyone else conducted themselves in the same way, we would still have a functioning society. So it's like, if you're a shithead, could we all be shitheads and this all work? No. then get on your shit, dude, and change your behavior so that if everyone functioned in the same way you did, we would still have a functioning society.
Don't take people's good actions for granted. They choose to be good people. And they could just as easily choose not to be.
Exactly. Period.
Okie dokie. Well, I hope you like that episode. There's a lot of things that are that deep, so if we missed one, let us know. We'd love to talk about it some more. We're yappers. As always, please subscribe and go follow us on social media for updates. I'm at Berenice and
I'm at Ella L. Tudor.
All right, bye.
See you next week. Bye.